Hi stock investors, JJ here, welcome back. Well, Michael Burry of Big Short fame made a killing in the Big Short by shorting the US housing market. We've all seen the film. Super investor Michael Burry here is now taking a big bet on Chinese stocks, a few in particular, and he's been winning big recently with the rise in the Chinese stock market. We'll take a look at those stocks, we'll take a look at the rises, and maybe what's going to happen next. We'll have a look at the outlook, things that have been happening in the macro there in the stock market. So let's get into it. So this is Michael Burry's portfolio here, and this is from a portfolio where we can see his overseas international stocks as well. And Data Roma, which a lot of people use, you can't see this biggest one. British American Tobacco is actually his largest position at 17.57% of the portfolio. And next, of course, is Alibaba at 17.53% of the portfolio. Really, it's only $11.2 million, which is fairly small, really. So you'd have to think that he's got a lot of cash. Actually, he's not fully invested, which probably shows his thinking about the US market. So he's got some in other countries, but the US market, a lot of people are saying it's fairly expensive. The multiples are creeping up there. Everything suddenly seems more expensive than it did even a few months ago, with AI roaring and other stocks starting to creep up as well. But I digress. Let's get back into this. So Alibaba is his biggest holding here in the Chinese market, and then we go down and then he's got Baidu as well, 6.5. So that's 10% of the portfolio or his assets there that are actually invested right now. And next, right under that, is JD.com at 10.15%, about the same amount there. So those are the stocks, three fairly decent bets in terms of percentages in the Chinese market there. And how have they been doing? If you've been taking notice, if you've been watching the previous videos on this channel, I talked about David Tepper and how he was pounding the table for Chinese stocks in the last couple of weeks. He's been betting, and that's another video. We're going to focus on Michael Burry here. So this is Data Roma here, as I said. So you can see here, this only shows his US stocks here, but these Chinese stocks are listed on the US market. We can see here his activity, which is the interesting part over the past few quarters. We can see in Q2, Q3 hasn't come out. It'd be super interesting to see what he's done in the third quarter. If anything, he might just be sitting on it, riding it. If he sold them before this big run up, that would be disappointing for him and perhaps for us as viewers watching him work. Do his magic, not always magic. Everybody makes mistakes. But we can see here in Q2, Baidu, he added 87.57% to that position there, and Baba, he added 24% there, and he's bought a lot which aren't in the US market in there. Well, bought a few, I didn't say a lot, but he's actually been selling a few. He tends not to hold things for a very long time, so it makes you wonder when he's going to get out of the Chinese market. He's a deep value investor, so buys things that are super cheap, waits till they rise. He doesn't really wait till they're overvalued. He seems to get out when things are around what he thinks are fair value, or maybe a bit more. If you might remember, he was in GameStop before that turned into a meme stock. He bought that super cheap. It went up to a reasonable level. It went up way beyond that, but he did make money from that. JD, look at that. He reduced 30.56%. And in the quarter before that, we can see in terms of Chinese stocks, JD, he added 80% to that there. Alibaba 66, so quite significant in Q1 2024, and this is before this big run up, well before it. It was obviously as a deep value getting in before the run up. And it has to be said, we've had plenty of time in the Chinese market for things to turn around. A lot of people think it wouldn't turn around. And Baidu was his buy, the first buy there for Baidu in Q1 2024. Let's go down to the quarter before that and see the activity. He was in JD, added another 60% to their 75,000 shares. Alibaba added 50%, 25,000 shares. And if we go down to the quarter before that, we can see where he started to buy Alibaba there in Q3 2023 and also JD.com in Q3 2023. So he was well before this big run up, getting in early. And let's turn to what's been happening in the market with these stocks. His holdings, we can see if year to date, we can see Alibaba's up 44%. So he has been winning. He's been winning big, but it's mainly, as you might know, in the past month or so, it's been pretty big news. David Tepper talking about it, as I said, pounding the table on it just in the last couple of weeks. He's been in before this previous quarter as well. Baidu's actually down for the year, still 9.78, and JD's up 57% for the year. And if we go back just a month, we can see that Alibaba's up 32.5%, Baidu's up 27.5%, and JD's up 65.5%. Michael Burry will have done well in the past month. The question is he going to hold them or is he going to sell them? We'll have to see what happens. We'll have to wait till the next filings come out for this quarter, and we'll see what happens. Now, if you're getting value out of this episode so far, I'd really appreciate it if you manage to smash that like button to help the algorithm to spread it to more people. And if you're new here, do consider subscribing as well. Now, looking at the Chinese market overall, this caught my eye about what's been happening recently. This is actually a New York Times article. I'm not going to wait. Young Chinese jump into stock frenzy. So the Chinese government's been adding stimulus. It's been getting people hyped up, even though the economy's bad, getting people into the stock market by the sound of it, if this is correct. Despite the risks of investing at a volatile time, investors see the recent stock rally as a rare opportunity to make money when China's economy is sluggish. And this article outlines some of the things that have been happening there. Young people in China have jumped into stock trading in the past 2 weeks. Notice I said stock trading, not necessarily investing, since Beijing took its most aggressive steps yet to revive economic growth and persuade consumers to start spending. So this begs the question, is it going to continue? Is the stimulus going to continue? Is the stock market going to continue? It has pulled back. If we just look recently this week, what's been happening, it's actually down. It's had a breather taken. Is it a breather or is this the rally over? There are arguments for both sides. Some people think that that's it. It's not going to happen. But if we look what's happening just in the past few days, in the past hours actually, China Finance Minister plans briefing as investors seek stimulus. Ministry of Finance will strengthen fiscal policy. Notice says economists expect fiscal package worth up to 3 trillion yuan. We'll have to see if that happens, but that's the current news. Chinese stocks paired losses as the offshore yuan strengthened on the announcement as investors speculated again, trading, speculating. There's a lot of that does go on in the Chinese market, as I understand it. The nation may unveil fiscal stimulus at the briefing that's coming up. That optimism faded, however, as traders reassess the strength of any measures policymakers will make. So this is just day-to-day stuff. Investing is long-term. Is it going to continue? David Tepper thinks that it's going to continue, that this is just the start of the Chinese market. Let's look at some of the commentary quickly and see what they've been saying. Chinese stocks, Goldman Sachs sees potential for 15 to 20% further gains. So David Tepper sees more than that.
What sort of reaction are we expecting from Asian equities, given that we didn't get that sort of major stimulus that we were expecting?
Yeah, so yesterday obviously was a very significant pullback, but I think we have to remember that came in the context of the market being up 38% from the low on September 11th. So we had a huge...
Yeah, we saw that. We see that. It's been declosing the China market, and it's gone up so quickly. There had to be a pullback. Question is the start of something, a bigger pullback, or is this not? As David Tepper said that he was going to double down on his positions if it did pull back. I wonder, we'll have to wait until this filing to see if he actually does that.
Huge run and a lot of expectation built up about easing. And in conversations with investors over the past few days in the run-up to the NDRC meeting yesterday, there were some overly inflated expectations about, first of all, what might be announced and then the magnitude of what might be announced. So what was indicated in various press rumors in the media around the time that Xi Jinping and then Li Cheng were making announcements on fiscal was about, call it 2 to 3 trillion renminbi of stimulus. expectations then inflated to up to 10 trillion, which was wildly overly optimistic. And so I think there were a number of, you might call them tourist investors, who were unaware that the NDRC meeting was never one that was going to have those sorts of announcements.
We do have the finance ministry meeting coming up.
When you see the Ministry of Finance, which is where fiscal stuff would be announced, number one, and number two, it's the National People's Congress Standing Committee meeting end of this month or early.
Okay, this is on Reddit posted here. China Finance Ministry schedules October 12th. Press briefing on fiscal policy and economic growth. So we'll have to see what happens at that. There is expectations, as he said, for that. And so that's the macro. We don't want to get too far into the macro because these are just day-to-day, week-to-week things, but there's expectations that they will keep the stimulus going. If you remember what happened in the US from 2020, when the pandemic came along, there was massive stimulus and the stock market did rocket. But as I've joked, compared to the US, even just in the past few weeks, China's saying, hold my beer in terms of stimulus. In terms of the stock market, the jump in the stock market, it was deep lows. There's no doubt about that. Some of these stocks have been trading super low single-digit multiples, as David Tepper outlined. So we'll have to see what happens in the coming days and weeks, and I will keep you informed. In the meantime, I've just launched memberships on the Art of Value channel. I put a link in the pinned comment and the description, so you can check this out. If you hit the link and you'll find out what it's all about. But basically, you get priority comments. The other channel's growing exponentially, so priority comments on there. On the Art of Value channel, early access to videos on there. Members only live streams and videos, access to that, photos and status updates and member shout outs. Now the price of it is just the price of a cup of coffee. I wanted to make it not expensive. There'll be a mix of the two channels, a lot of content to go in there just for members. If you are subscribed to both channels, you maybe think about doing membership there. If you enjoyed this today, do subscribe to this channel. This is a relatively new channel. I'm going to put a link on screen to one of those David Tepper videos talking about Alibaba. Go and see that if you haven't seen that already. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.